Welcome to a very special episode of TFL Talking Trucks because this is a world debut of a brand new truck. And of course, this is an audio recording, so you can listen to it anywhere. If you're listening, you can listen to Apple, Amazon Podcast, Spotify, everywhere else that podcasts are distributed. But this is also going to be a video recording on our YouTube channel, TFL Talk. And it's a video walk around. So it's a very special episode, actually, because we have the expert, Samantha in this case, and a brand new truck, which is basically a big rig, semi, heavy hauler, work truck.
Do you guys love trucks? If so, we've got a new podcast that will keep you entertained for hours, from on-road to off-road, from Raptors to Frontiers to Tacomas. Check out tfltruck.com/podcast or go to wherever you get your favorite podcast, including Google Podcasts, iTunes, and Spotify.
So, Samantha, please introduce yourself really quick and kind of let's start with the Western Star 49X.
You got it. Thank you. My name is Samantha Parlier. I'm the head of Vocational Market Development for Daimler Trucks North America, and Western Star is a proud member of that Daimler Truck North America family. So my job is to take a look at the vocational truck market, figure out what we need to develop for the future, like 10 years out and longer, as well as figure out how to increase our market share of what we've got today. And the 49X is our latest tool in that toolbox.
And it's giant. It's right behind you.
Well, for your viewers, I'm not so giant myself. On a good day and with these shoes, I might break the 5'2" plane. So it's actually not as large as it seems because I'm not so large. But compared to your everyday pickup truck, it's pretty significantly bigger.
So it's a big rig, fair to say. So tell me a little bit about, so it's a brand new kind of model, 49X. Tell me about what is this vocational type of industry? What is that about?
Yeah, most people when they hear vocational think that for a living I get to go on vacations all the time, which is not the case. I wish it was, but it is not the case. Vocational means a truck that's really designed to do a specific task or job. So when you think about, when you say the term big rig, what it conjures up in my brain is kind of that long and tall truck cruising across the highway, and he's got a 53-foot box van behind him, and it can carry anything. It can carry TVs, it can carry toilet paper, it can carry anything. These trucks in the vocational market are designed to do one thing only and do it well. Like for example, behind me here, I've got a 49X with a dump body on it. Dump trucks, construction trucks, those are all vocational trucks. Garbage trucks, for example, you would never send a garbage truck out to do an Amazon delivery. So in our world, we call that a vocational. It's got a specific job to do, it's vocation, and it does it all day long, every day.
So it's a job, and it's also usually a very, very tough job, right? Because this is also kind of like a quarry truck where it's carrying, gravel or rock or maybe even logs or something else, right?
Yeah, what's really different and actually from the manufacturer and design and engineering perspective, very difficult, is that you have to design a truck that's going to do a gamut of things. So you mentioned logging. One of the ways, and maybe we'll get into a little bit more, that we test our trucks is we go and visit customers and we instrument them with 3-axis accelerometers. Really, it's bringing back the engineering days of my youth, but we put over 300 different spots of instrumentation on these trucks and we run them around. And the way that we found that the BC logger was in fact the toughest vocational job in the industry is by doing that. We rigged up logging trucks, we rigged up oil field trucks, we rigged up dump trucks, mixer trucks. So some of them incredibly harsh lives. Those BC loggers, the guys that you think of, the old school guys with the chainsaws and the plaid shirts out in the wild, taking the trees down and bringing them home, those huge logs that become the trailer. We have to design a truck that works for that application, as well as the mixer truck that sees a hard life, but it's a very different hard life. It's spending a lot of time getting to and from the job site on asphalt, on pavement, and then a little bit of time on the job site and working. Two totally different use cases, and we need one tool to do both jobs.
Awesome. So let's start kind of the visual portion of this show and kind of show me the new look of the truck a little bit. And let's talk about I noticed new headlights also.
Yeah, so the headlights are critical. So most vocational, especially in construction up north, they start their days out early. They like to start early before traffic gets in the way. And what happens overnight, things ice up. So even in the cold northern tundra, you can see, if you look real closely here, can you see that? These lines here? So that's actually a proprietary technology where we print the heated grid on the back side of this lens. So nothing's going to damage it. It's not going to get scraped off. And it's dual stage. It both heats and heats to melt the ice and heats to clear fog and condensation in warm climates. So this bad boy can melt 3 millimeters of ice at -40 in under 10 minutes. So it looks cool, but like everything you'll see about this truck, completely functional and intentional. So if we back up and give you kind of a, you know what, I'm going to hop in and turn on the lights too, because you'll see with the styling on this thing that we've really gone for that tough, aggressive look that's in line with what this truck needs to do.
Yeah, and it's obviously LED lights we're talking about here. And obviously amber marker lights all over the place and really bright LEDs.
Really bright LEDs, all LED, which is one of the reasons that heated grid is so important. LED lights don't generate heat. So to keep this clear day and night, we had to create that technology. One of the styling features that's a personal favorite of mine is this lighted air intake lamp. So you've got your air intake here, but this lighted lamp is important for two reasons. One, quite frankly, I think it just looks badass. But it's also fantastic from a visibility standpoint. So think about, I want to challenge your listeners now when they're out driving around to like look at all the construction trucks around them. Most people don't spend a lot of time watching them, but if you take a look, they're everywhere. And they're in cities, they're in job sites. This is a turn signal as well. So when you're at that four-way stop, this bad boy is going to let other drivers know, hey, I'm turning. This eyebrow lens here also goes to a turn signal. So lots of visuals for other people in the area to know what that truck's intention is.
Yeah, and that heating element on the headlight is very important. I wish more pickup trucks these days would have a heating element, because I've had a couple of snowstorms in Colorado where, the visibility goes down in a snowstorm and there's no way to clear the headlight, which is
other
dangerous.
Than getting out with the old-fashioned ice scraper, which nobody likes to do. So we're really proud of the technology here, and this lamp and lens have been over 6 years in the making, just on the headlights. And you'll notice we had to develop too something you don't find in a light-duty truck industry. And if we could get back out a little bit and take a look, we have a set forward and a set back axle. And that refers to the position of the axle here. I'll jump in and show you the position of the bumper to the center line of the axle. The reason we have two is there are weight distribution laws all over the country, all over North America, different cities, states, countries that tell you what your weight's got to be across your axles. And sometimes it's advantageous to have one that's further forward, and sometimes it's advantageous to have one that's set back. So we had to create two different headlights, two different hoods, obviously, to cover those needs.
Awesome. So let's kind of dig in further. I think people might be wondering what's under the hood, and also how actually heavy are these trucks?
Well, turns out that's a really difficult question to answer. Not what's under the hood, but how heavy it is. And the reason that's difficult, and my stature doesn't help. Did we not we lock this head back up? The stature doesn't help in getting the hood open. I think that it's locked on that side. Push it up. Yeah. But back to your weight question. Yeah, that was awkward. Back to your weight question, because the trucks are so different, right? So the way you spec a dump truck, completely different from the way you spec a logging truck. You can almost think of all of the major components of this truck as unique, right? You spec the front suspension, so what front springs you have, what rating you need. You spec the rear suspension, what type of suspension. You go in for an air ride, you go in for a walking beam, you go in for good old-fashioned springs, depending on what you want the truck to do. So the weight ranges, I mean, you can spec one that's 16,000 pounds and you can spec one that's a hell of a lot heavier. So no clear answer on weight, but we're under the hood now.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the power options that these trucks have?
So the 49X actually has 4 different power unit options. Our own proprietary Detroit powertrain. So we've got a DD16, which is a 16 liter, and a DD15, which is a 15 liter. The DD16 goes up to 600 horsepower and 2,050 pounds of torque. So a tiny bit bigger than what you see in everyday automotive. But we also offer Cummins X15 and X12, and that X12 is a lighter weight option. It goes all the way up to 500 horsepower, but only 1,700 foot-pounds of torque. This particular truck has got that DD16 in it. So a couple cool things you see here that the engineers have the challenge of doing, fitting a 16-liter motor under a hood of a truck that's going to spend time in the city. So we use the splayed rail. Going to be probably pretty hard for you to see, but that rail actually widens out at the front so that we could get the motor lower, get the radiator lower, and make that hood angle really severe so we don't give up on things like visibility, which keeps people safe. That's the, number one, truck's got to do its job, but it's got to do it while keeping people safe.
Uh-huh. And I heard that you have a new transmission. Is all of these engines have the new transmission, or how does that work?
No, it works the same way as the suspensions. You pick your powertrain based on what you're trying to do and your transmission. So we do limit some of the combinations. It's not a complete free-for-all where you can put any transmission with any engine, because that would create a myriad of design options bigger than I can mathematically calculate at this exact moment. But the DT12 vocational and vocational extreme transmissions do go behind either the DD15 or DD16 engine.
So tell me a little bit more about the transmission, because this is kind of a brand new thing, right?
Yeah, it's a game changer. It's awesome. So a little history about our parent company, Daimler Trucks North America. We also are a part of Global Daimler, and they developed the DT12 highway version of the transmission a number of years ago. And before that, automated manual transmissions, which are basically a manual transmission that uses technology. It started out with air solenoids, electronic shifters to make the shift faster than a person can. I'll digress a little bit. I know you mentioned you were getting your CDL. Have you driven a manual transmission truck yet?
No, and actually, I drove an automated. Actually, I think it may have been a Freightliner. Yeah,
which is a great. I'm glad it stayed in our Daimler family of brands. Yeah. So 15 years ago, Andre, if you had been trying to get your CDL, you would have had a harder time, because pretty much manual transmissions were the way that you went. Every big rig had that great 18 speed. And what a lot of people who've never tried to drive a manual transmission in a truck don't know, they expect it's like driving a manual transmission in a car, right? So they're like, I can drive a stick, I know how to do the clutch. It's totally opposite. There's no synchronization in big rig transmissions. And what that means is you've got to match your engine RPM to the speed that the transmission gears are spinning. So when you go to make an upshift, you actually have to drop your RPM speed. And when you go to make a downshift, you have to raise it. So that intuitive thing when you learn to drive the manual transmission in a car, and you're on the gas, off the clutch, and your feet are doing this, the exact opposite of what you want to do when you're driving a truck. And that's why when I was learning to drive drive truck well over 15 years ago now, I used to just repeat, grind them till you find them, because you'd actually grind the gear if you didn't get those speeds matched up. A lot of talking I just did there. I apologize for that. But the reason that's important is because when we introduced our DT12 highway automated manual, so the automated manual transmission can make those shifts way faster than a person can. And that's where double clutching comes from. You clutch once to come out of the gear, and then you clutch again to put it back in after you've matched your RPMs up. Mm-hmm. So think about it. I mean, you're limited by human capabilities, and you can work the pedals pretty fast, but nowhere near as fast as solenoids and computer equipment, I'm afraid. So we brought around that change in the on-highway market because we introduced it, and people were like, it can't be as good as a human. It can't. And turns out it could, and had a lot of benefits. People got less tired. The clutches in these things are beasts. Like my leg would shake after, especially in city driving, you're in, you're out. And I used to know off the top of my head, and I don't anymore, what the clutch resistance was in a manual transmission, but it's a workout. And people started adopting it. And I think we're going to see that here, bringing it all the way back to the vocational space. Automated manuals have become more and more popular in the vocational space, but it's been a little more of a holdout. And we're excited about the DT12V and VX to really take it to the next level.
And this is basically a 12-speed, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I want to kind of transition to the cab and talk about kind of the new cab design, and also kind of what it takes to test one of these trucks before you actually launch it like this, right?
Yeah, it takes a lot. I'd say we started testing over 5 years ago. And we have a whole design process we go through where we iterate, like I'm sure it's like any automotive design, where we have a schedule and we're like, hey, we get our very first sample. We call it our A sample. We test that. And we started testing that at our high desert proving grounds in Madras, Oregon. And where it's sunny most of the year, so we can run trucks continuously in consistent environment. And we started testing that A sample design over 5 years ago. And so that's the whole truck. But in addition to that, we mount just the cab, and sometimes we also do the cab and chassis on shaker tables. And that basically takes, when I talked about instrumenting earlier, we go out, we instrument the trucks, we create a map. Basically, we say, hey, a typical logging truck gets these inputs in this format. And we recreate those inputs on a giant shaker table that then beats the truck to hell in the exact same way it's used in real life. So that shaker table can rack up 800,000 vocational miles, just like that customer is beating it up day in and day out. 800,000 is in vocational land a lot. Typically, a vocational customer, and again, it's such a broad term, runs about 10,000 miles a year, sometimes 25, 30, but they don't generally rack up a lot of miles because they're doing that job site work most of the time. Rack up a lot of engine hours, not a lot of miles.
I gotcha. All right, let's transition to the cab and the new design.
Yeah, this is our X series cab. The 49X is new for us, and it's a new cab. The cool part is, again, being part of that Daimler family, we could pull from technology all across the globe, and we did that in the design of this cab. It's an aluminum cab with strategically placed steel reinforcements. We use a technology called topology optimization, where we basically can look at all the forces that happen on a cab, including in rollover situations, and we can create an exoskeleton that can resist all of it. So really cool technology. If we get a chance, especially if you come out here, I would love to take you kind of behind the curtain a little bit and show you what some of the engineers do for fun. Yes, engineers do some weird things for fun, but get you a chance to see that in person because it's cool. So then if that's not enough, like shaking the bejesus out of it, actually driving it over harsh events, we crush it. We do one test called the Pendulum Test, where I actually take all the weight and swing from the side, nail it, and then we do another one where we just straight up put it in between steel plates and crush it. And the reason we do that is to make sure if you are in an unfortunate situation like a rollover, everybody stays safe.
Very, very cool. Well, so how do you get into one of these?
Well, we have a little rule in the industry that's called 3 points of contact.
Yes.
Kind of like when you're working around your house, you should always use 3 points of contact: 2 hands and foot, 2 feet and a hand. So you'll notice right away, lots of grab handle options. You've got an external one that's mounted on the exhaust stack, 2 internal ones. This is actually a certified grab handle, this map pocket. It's reinforced with metal so that if somebody wanted to hang off of it, and if that somebody was a 350-pound person, they could hang off of that. And then, so when you get in, it's actually pretty simple in the new 49X. We took a lot of attention to detail when we designed those steps to make sure they were like a staircase instead of more like a ladder. So in the past, you would just kind of make them vertical and in you would get. And Sarah, if you could zoom in and come back out here with my 3 points of contact, I hope you notice how closely I adhered to the rule. Zoom in right here, because this is come from this angle here. So we actually, the depth of engineering in this ingress and egress and access package is crazy. So we used to always just use a square step, right? You just cut it off, but that gives you a much smaller tread surface. So we ended up designing steps that tuck up onto the fuel tank so we could shove the top step further inward, keep the bottom step outward to get that staircase ingress and egress. And I'll hop back in, and then I'll show you a view of what the driver would see. I'm gonna pass me that. So the cool part here is you can see all 3 steps as you get in and out. So in the past, that was much more like a ladder. The actual top of the cab was right over the top of the step, was right over the top of the next step. And you see this real kick-ass Western Star metal door plate. It's great because you can scrape your boots off on it. It's going to keep mud, snow, and ice out of your cab, but it also is that top step. And then you'll notice how aggressive the treads are here. And this is interesting. A lot of people, interesting to me, I should say, a lot of people don't realize the intent and engineering that goes into designing a tread pattern. These holes are actually tested to make sure mud, debris, ice chunks will fall through these larger holes, while these smaller holes are strategically placed to add grip. Too much grip and you could cause a slip and fall injury. Not enough grip and you could cause a slip and fall injury. So we repeatedly tested grip, size of holes, locations of holes to come up with what we have here, which is the perfect blend of grip, hole access to get in and out.
Very, very cool.
It's not that cool. I don't think you're like, she's nerdy, and that's okay. I think it's pretty cool, but I don't know. I love it. I love the work that goes into something like this. We had operators and drivers from across the country come in with different size feet, all the way up to size 15. You know, I don't have huge feet. We've talked about my stature a little bit, but we had them with their big boots, their big work boots, getting in and out to make sure that something so basic is ridiculously well designed and safe.
Well, that's what you're doing probably more often, right? Getting in and out of your truck. So
yeah, you know, that's a good point. When you talk about the big rig driver, what they do when they start their day is they get in, they shut the door, and they drive for about 4 hours. A vocational operator gets in, gets back out to do something, gets in, gets out, loads his truck up, gets to the job site. His drive is such a small part of their entire day. And after doing all of our studies, we found out that drivers and operators in a vocational environment are getting in and out up to 50 times a day. That's like a typical concrete mixer. That operator is getting in and out 50 times in one day. So the intention here has got to be spot on. Very different from kind of typical driving that you would think of.
So it's also an exercise.
It is, you know, it is an exercise, and it's funny you say that. I was driving a couple weeks ago out at our proving grounds in Madras. We also have a rock quarry there that we use. And the next day I was really sore and I couldn't figure out why I was sore. And I realized that I had probably climbed in and out of a truck around 100 times that day. And I had gotten a little bit of a workout. So for some people, it is an exercise.
Very cool. So can show me kind of the controls, and let's talk about all the kind of technology that comes into this truck.
Yeah. Do you want me to take it over and film, or do you want?
Yeah.
How do you want to handle the?
Yeah, I think you could film and kind of show the gauges, maybe the steering wheel.
Okay.
Also transmission modes. I think that's really cool. And kind of the rest of it.
Cool. Fred, you want to close the hood so it's better view? I'm going to shut the door because otherwise all of the alarms about being safe will go off. You know what? I'll keep these on. All right. So you know what? Here's a little bit of an interesting thing. I asked Fred to shut the hood. He doesn't know that it comes standard with a hood lock so that it doesn't blow over in the wind. And he is trying to figure out how to shut it.
He's new at this. Fred is new at this.
We should give him a little bit of a break. It's I think Fred can hear me. It's under you see it? It's yellow. You push it and then I'll let you close it.
Oh, I forgot to ask you one more thing. You have a new kind of a hood suspension system, right?
Oh yeah, Fred, open it back up.
No. Okay.
So you asked me that, and that's something I just think is so cool. It's if you want to see me geek out, ask me
Okay.
about the Isotec hood suspension, and it's important enough for me to get out of the truck and show you myself, because it's just great. So vocational trucks, we talked a little bit about the job sites, but imagine like that logger, they are driving through ruts that are like a foot deep, right? And think about when you're going at speed, because they want to get their loads, they want to get home at the end of the day, you're hitting that foot deep rut at 20, 25, 30 miles an hour. You're sending that force up through your axle, up through your suspension, right here to where it's mounted. I mean, it's bushed, right? It's like old spring style suspensions. You got a bushing here that takes, or that's not, it's right. I'm doing a bad job of being both the talker and the videographer, but it's bush, so it's taking some of the weight, but it's basically right. You can see right here going right into the frame. And what would happen in a traditional hood mounting system is you would have a bushing mount that is mounted on that frame. And so you think about that force coming right up, right into the frame, right into the hood, and the hood takes a beating. So this is the Isotec hood suspension. It's actually basically a coilover design. The strut also takes some of that force, and it dissipates that energy. And what we're able to do over the last 6 years is tune these springs to be the right, to get the right frequency so that the hood is protected. So it's a DCPD hood that actually flexes quite a bit. So we could use that in combination with the material and create a hood that doesn't break. It takes the flex, it takes the beating. And I mean, I said it earlier, but it just revolutionizes what a hood looks like in the vocational market. Also helped us take about 100 pounds out of the entire system.
That's really interesting. So basically the hood hinge is kind of using a spring. So some of that, I'm just trying to understand it, make sure I get it right. So the hood hinge is kind of also suspended, so it doesn't kind of send shock through the rest of the cab. Is that fair to say?
So it mounts, it's a 4-point mount. So the hinge itself, it mounts down here as part of that Isotec system. So it's a little bit of a tight space here, but I've got my finger on it. I don't know if you can see it there. And that's where it pivots. But then it mounts back here on this bushing. And so what really happens, and I think Fred can get you some pretty cool video of this, is as that frame is racking around and hitting those inputs, the hood, because the cab is mounted on a cab suspension, so it doesn't move as aggressively as the frame does. The hood is mounted here and flexes up there, right? Mm-hmm. So it stays stable. So when you watch that video, you'll see the radiator is actually mounted to the frame, and you'll see that moving and the hood isn't moving. And that really is protecting that hood material. It's also keeping the driver more energized, because their eyesight, when we close the hood and we get in the cab, I'll show you, their eyesight could be distracted by the hood bouncing around, and you've got the plane of the dash. Mm-hmm. And when you're driving that truck, it's not moving. And so you're getting a lot less fatigue on that operator.
Okay, gotcha. I'm learning so much today, so thank you very much.
Hey, no, this is really fun for me as well. I can talk about this truck all day long. So thank you for taking your time. All right, so now I'm inside, and I'll take you through. So one of the other things about vocational trucks is that they always need to have equipment added. So your big rig truck that's hauling freight in a trailer has what's called a fifth wheel, and that's what hooks up to the trailer and mates the trailer. They drive around. These trucks have bodies that are mounted. So we send a truck that looks a lot like this one with blank frame rails out of our factory, and it goes somewhere and it gets the body put on it. So this one in particular is a Godwin dump that got put on, and they have to mount controls and things like that. Mm-hmm. in order for it to work. So we've got some cool features that we designed into this truck that really help make it easier for bodybuilders to do that. This one right here, it's our quick fit dash plug, and it's a plug that allows you direct access into the RP1226 connector, which is really the intelligent backbone of the truck system. So when the bodybuilder gets that truck, they used to have to actually take this entire dash surface off to access that brain. And think about every one of these control switches, a lot more switches than you typically find in a regular pickup. They all have a very important purpose on the job site. And if you screw any of those things up, then the bodybuilder puts the dash back on, they mess up a wiring, a connector, they break something, then the customer's got a problem. I just realized my hand's over the lens. There we go. So another thing we've got here is that flex plate. This is a metal plate that the bodybuilder can actually take off and put their own in or drill this. This one's actually set up for a ram mount, so you can mount a screen, which is real popular in vocational to have a control screen as well. So that's why you see this connector here and these holes there for a ram mount. Got your typical HVAC. That's kind of no different. We've got 10 different blower speeds. It's important, obviously, to keep operators dry, comfortable, keep the windshield clear. But I'll zoom in here on these switches for you so you can kind of get an idea of the thing about the vocational market. The guy's wearing gloves and he or she needs to be able to operate these. This is the traction control off, hill start aid off, lane departure warning on and off. So this particular truck is equipped with safety systems. So if you start to drift out of your lane, you'll get a loud buzzer that tells you, pay more attention.
Is this, can we spend a little bit more time on kind of the driver assistance features? So these trucks can now have something like the adaptive cruise control, is that right? And also kind of side warning?
Yeah, this one, in fact, let's try a little experiment if that's okay with you. Can't guarantee it's going to work, but I wonder if I start the truck up and have Fred walk. Oh, actually, just turning it on. So this triangle here in the A pillar is connected to a sensor that's on the right-hand side of the truck. And when someone walks by, there's a car object there, and you're going slow, it turns yellow to warn you. If you turn on your turn signal and something's there, it turns red and you get an audible as well. And that's what we call our side guard assist, to help a driver know that something's there. You can also see from this position, you've got that C-bar mirror, and it's got a two-piece. You can see my assistants there walking by to try and turn the light yellow. But it does have two sections of the mirror. You see this a lot too on pickup trucks, where they have the flat glass on the top and the curved glass on the bottom to give you a completely good view. And this one's also equipped with a down view mirror so that you can see straight down as well if you're on a job site. This one does have the advanced braking assist technology, which goes all the way down to 0. So that's used, that's done by creating radar that's mounted on the bumper, as well as the camera and the guts that are inside of this thing. And you can basically follow a car. We're not driving, but it'll show you here on the screen. Let me see if I can turn these lights off and get you a better. Let me see if I can get the.
I can kind of see it. Yeah, I mean.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see the center gauge cluster and kind of those highway marker lines kind of on the screen and the zone.
So if we were driving, just like you see in a lot of passenger cars today, and you were following a car, it would hone in on that car and it would adjust your speed accordingly to keep a safe following distance that you set based on the seconds and how far you want to follow. And it does it all the way down to 0. So what that means is if you're in stop and go traffic, it'll stop the truck and within I think it's 2.5 seconds restart you. And you don't have to do a thing. So it's pretty cool. It's unheard of in the vocational truck industry to have technology like that integrated. So we're really excited about Detroit Assurance coming into the vocational market.
It's very cool. I think there's 2 schools of thought. I've talked to several kind of long haul drivers, big rig drivers. And usually there's a part of the customer base there, the drivers who don't like assistance. They always say,
Yep.
I'm a professional driver. I want to drive by myself. Have you heard those different points of view on this?
Absolutely. And Andre, quite frankly, it's like anything. I don't know. Do you have a safety system in your own car?
Well, I drive many, many different trucks. I'm very fortunate. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of proponent of technology. I like it because I'm also studying it, right? Because I'm trying to figure out, how do these systems work? But I also know a lot of my friends just in pickup trucks who don't want those systems,
Don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because I'm probably a little bit different, where I used to be a little more like, it's a gimmick, right? And then I ended up getting a car that had a safety system, and it came on one time when I was driving, and it was an incident that happened out of my control, and the car could react faster than I could, and that's just a fact, right? The amount of time it takes you to take your foot from the throttle to the brake versus how quickly the car can do it, the car is going to be faster every single time. And I think it only takes one of those incidents for you to realize it's not, are you not a professional driver? Because we hear that as well. People, we have customers that are like, no, I'm a professional driver. I can be better than the computer. And even the best driver, your reaction times are not faster than the technology. And so I think what we'll see over time is like a lot of technology adoption. It just continues to increase, and as people get more exposure to it, that's kind of how I see it. It's how the industry has sort of responded on the on-highway side. And I don't think the vocational industry will be any different once it starts to prove itself and people get comfortable with it. They learn more about it, and they have those moments where, and what I'm talking about, the heart stopping,
Yeah.
like, wow, that just either saved my life or saved some significant damage. And then you go from being a doubter to being a lover.
Yeah, and I agree. And I also think that as these technologies actually advance and become smoother, right? Because there is some perception that, oh, it's jerky and it's doing this and it's doing that, but they have advanced. So, and as long as it becomes better and smoother, I think there's going to be more welcoming, for that.
And that's probably one of our biggest challenges, is that the early technologies were pretty janky. I don't know if that's a technical term, the word janky, but there's a lot of people that had experience with the early technology, and they were like, hey, this isn't for me. And the Detroit Assurance technology is above and beyond anything people have experienced before. And so that's just a challenge in life, is to get people to realize that it's evolved, it's come a long way, and to give it another shot if they tried an earlier version of safety systems that appeared on the market. I think they've been out well over a decade now in the market, in the truck industry. They've been in cars for longer than that.
Cool. Before, I wanted to ask you about some of the other modes on the transmission, but since we're talking about a little bit more future looking, does the Daimler Group and Western Star, what about electrification? Are you guys looking into those areas as well for big trucks?
We are. I think we've talked. Daimler has talked really publicly about it. I am not the electrification spokesperson. Clearly, I'm having trouble even saying it. So I'm not going to offer my opinions or comments on it. I will say, as we continue to study the technology, when it makes sense to bring it to the vocational market, we'll pull on that Daimler Global every single time and bring it in as quickly and as efficiently as possible once it makes sense.
Okay. So can we keep going on the kind of some of the controls? Yeah. I really liked that you have different transmission modes. I think that's really interesting. It's kind of like a pickup truck.
It is like a pickup truck. There's 3 different modes on the DT12 transmission. And it's interesting, different and similar, I guess, to some pickup trucks, but not necessarily all. The customer can actually specify which modes they want. So you may have a customer like in the oil field that says, hey, I really just want to have regular and off-road, right? So it's economy, performance, and off-road are the 3 levels that we offer. So someone can say, I want my driver to have access to all 3 of those. And the way that they engage it is through, we have our own proprietary shifter. Can you see that stock there?
Yeah, it's on the column, steering column.
Yep, steering column. And that's actually the way you go from neutral to drive to reverse is right here. And then to change the mode, it's just a quick push. And you can go to that performance or off-road just by doing that. And then you can hold it in to go to manual mode where you actually then just do do you hear it? I don't know if you can hear it. I'm making it, it's trying to shift. I'm in neutral, but it's thinking I'm trying to drive. But that's how you upshift and downshift if you're in that manual mode. So there you see, as you change it, should fire myself as a videographer. As you change it there, that driver information display will tell you what's going on.
And there's also something called Paver Mode, Rock Free Mode.
Yeah.
Power Mode? What is that?
Power Mode. They all sound really cool. And Andre, I cannot wait to demonstrate that to you when you get here. So Paver Modes, we'll start with that one. It's probably the most basic. So again, challenge your listeners to, when they see some construction out there, stop and take a look at what's going on, because you'll start to observe things. And the way that asphalt is laid down for most roads now is the dump truck pulls up on the job site, and then it basically backs up to the operation, and a paver, which is at the front of it, it's got like this large opening that
like a bucket, like a big bucket. Yeah,
bucket's probably not the right word. It's God, it's a paver. There's no, I want everybody to Google asphalt paver so they know what I'm talking about, but it's just basically a big opening, and the dump truck will start to raise the dump truck, but that paver is actually what's pushing the dump truck. So you need to shift your transmission. If you're the driver, so for right now, we're going to pretend like we're driving and we're paving. So we pulled up, we put our PTO in gear. We raise our bed, right? So there's a hydraulic system that's going to drive the ram, that's going to raise the truck bed. And the asphalt starts to fall into paver. And as the driver, I'm watching in this mirror, and I'm watching somebody about 150 feet behind me, and they're giving me hand signals. And they're doing like, hey, raise your bed, lower your bed, because what's the gravity feed is what's feeding the asphalt into the paver. And the paver is setting the speed. So paver mode means that you don't have to touch anything in the truck. You just have to put it into drive and drive away, and it will start to drive away without changing speed. Because imagine what would happen if you have this, and it's slow. You're talking like, feet per minute. The paver is going real slow, and they're laying out asphalt that's about this thick. If you push down the brakes and you stop the paver, and it's continually feeding the material, what it's going to create a bump in the road, which no one's going to like, no one's going to be happy with, and realistically, if that happened, they'd have to redo that section of road. So paver mode means you put it into drive. So when that guy gives me the signal and he says, hey, drive away, I flip it into drive and I drive away, and it drives away seamlessly from the job site. So that's how paver mode works. I got a little excited about that, even though I said it wasn't that great. Power launch is for a totally different application. So it's where you've got a heavier load. So think heavy haul, somebody that's taking like a excavator to a job site, or maybe in the oil field, they're hauling equipment. It actually works through the transmission to give you more power and boost your power at launch, so you can get going faster and get to where you need to be. So that's power launch. Rock free is awesome. So when you're on a job site, so think about have you ever been to Michigan, the Upper Peninsula in Michigan?
Thankfully, no, because I know that's where they do winter testing usually, but I want to go there in the summer.
Well, in the summer, if you go, and particularly like the spring and the fall, Michigan loggers actually are a really unique application, and that's where they go out into the forest. So if pretend for a moment we're Michigan loggers, and so you're the driver, you're the only one there. The logging company has come through, they've cut the timber, and you have a crane on the back of your truck, and you have your trailer, and you're going to load your logs all by yourself, and then you're going to get in, you're going to drive away. Well, in the spring in Michigan, the mud is deep.
Yeah.
And it's common for these trucks to get stuck. And so what they do is they park a dozer about every 5 miles, depends on where you're going, that's ready to go. So if a driver gets stuck, they have to get out, walk all the way to get the dozer, bring it back, drag themselves out, take the dozer back, park it, and off they go. And what rock free mode does, if you get stuck, you remember back in the days of your parents, like my parents taught me to drive in the snow, and I learned how to drive in a manual. And if you got stuck, you'd like first reverse, and you were getting the momentum, you're rocking so that you could get some momentum and push yourself forward and get unstuck. And that's what the truck does. It uses the transmission, that DT12 vocational or vocational extreme transmission. You flip this switch, and it's got this that rock free symbol there that shows you, hey, this is what we want to do. You flip that sucker up, it'll put it into that mode on the display, and then you use the throttle to feather and get yourself rocking and get unstuck. And our customer test units in Michigan have used it more than once, and they actually sent us a video. The coolest thing, because they had all their friends there. They had all their friends there. They had all their they were like, watch this. They intentionally got the truck stuck. They got it out, and they were like, that's rock free mode, baby. And the smiles on their faces, they kind of had a party around rock free mode. It was awesome. And it's cool for somebody on the inside to see that design process get all the way out to the customer and see it work. It's the best feeling to see people that excited about your new technology and your new offering.
That's really, really cool. I have two more questions. I know we probably have to close down before we talk all day about this truck. Two more questions. Can you give me an idea about price? I know different fleets, buy these trucks or lease them, but can you give us any idea about pricing on this?
Yeah, it's a tough question because it's all over the board. How I talked a little bit earlier about how you spec it, right? The truck that I'm in is it actually has a tandem rear suspension, but has 2 lift axles, and that's going to dramatically change the price. So it swings so wildly. The trucks actually you can get with a sleeper attached as well. So there are some vocational applications, like if you're the guy delivering to a job site, there's hours of service rules. You can't drive for more than 8 hours at a time. So you need to have bunk time to be able to rest and recharge so you can get back out on the road. And so all those different option variations make it next to impossible to say, hey, it's going to be around this. But you can spec a truck. If your range is for this new 49X at the lowest end is probably in the 90s all the way up to easily get over 200 if you wanted to.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That kind of gives me a good idea. So
it's just such a big range. I hate talking about it, to be honest.
That's fine. And usually pickup truck, they start at 30, but they can also be 80,
Yeah, exactly.
So
it's the big difference with pickup trucks is usually like you have packages, right? Where you're like, you can buy a package and then you kind of know what you're getting in that package. And in the truck industry, because everything is so specific to that job that you're trying to get done, you're really trying to set up the perfect machine and the perfect tool for that job. So it's less package driven and more like component and option and what are you really trying to get done? What are you really trying to do? It's more driven by that, which makes it challenging.
And you're also keeping this truck for many, many years, right? It's in service for many years.
Yeah. Most of our customers keep their trucks for 25 to 30 years. It's not unusual to see it stay around for longer than that. In the concrete mixer industry, they'll put new barrels on a truck and they'll keep that truck around. So it's got to be durable. It's got to be tough because it's got to last a long time.
Cool. And finally, when are these trucks going to be out there? When can I see one at the construction site?
Yeah, we are actually starting production, but we're sending our first production units out to dealers so that more customers can get access to them. So you probably won't see one other than our test units. So if you know where to look, you'll see one on a job site right now. But you'll start seeing them in the beginning of the next year, really start turning up on job sites in droves.
Awesome. Well, I learned a lot. I think the listeners and the viewers learned a lot too. So Samantha, thank you very much for taking the time, and hopefully we'll we'll actually be in person eventually so I can actually drive the truck.
I cannot wait to have you here in person and take you through some of the harshest testing. I can't wait to take you over what we call track sticks, which beats the crap out of you and the truck. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thanks, Andre.
Okay.